India, home to 1.4 billion people, and proudly standing as the world's largest democracy. A nation where elections are not just political contests, but massive, complex festivals spanning the subcontinent. But the fundamental nature of these democratic festivals is undergoing a rapid, alarming shift. Voters are increasingly no longer swayed purely by ideological promises or long-term visions. The battleground has moved entirely to immediate, tangible rewards delivered right before voting day. Promises like zero-bill electricity for every household, regardless of income. The free distribution of laptops, smartphones, and domestic appliances, and direct, unconditional cash transfers deposited straight into voters' bank accounts. Political parties vehemently defend these schemes, labeling them as essential welfare for the poor. But economists and critics use a different term. Revadi, the sweet culture of electoral freebies. It is a sweet bribe that offers instant gratification, but hides a very bitter long-term cost. By early 2026, the financial reality of this culture became impossible to ignore. On January 31st, 2026, the government formally tabled a new economic survey in Parliament. This comprehensive document acts as the ultimate report card for the nation's fiscal health. The survey issued a stark, direct warning. The rapid expansion of unconditional cash transfers poses severe fiscal risks. The sheer scale of these political promises across multiple state elections has reached unprecedented levels. Between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 26, public spending on unconditional cash schemes skyrocketed by over 400%. The aggregate spending on these transfers alone is projected to hit a staggering number this year. 1.7 lakh crore rupees, entirely diverted into direct handouts. That is over $20 billion US, handed out with almost no conditions attached. This creates a massive fiscal rigidity, draining state finances and aggressively widening deficits. When a state's budget is entirely locked into paying for freebies, capital is paralyzed, leaving virtually zero remaining budget for building actual infrastructure or creating jobs, meaning fewer public schools are modernized and no new hospitals are built. So where exactly does this massive amount of money come from? Unlike the central government, state governments do not have the legal power to print their own currency. To fulfill these exorbitant election promises, state governments have to borrow heavily from the market. The Reserve Bank of India tracks state liabilities meticulously, and their recent reports paint a grim picture. Total outstanding liabilities of states have swelled to dangerous proportions over the last 3 years. They now stand at nearly 28.1% of the national GDP. The data is startling. Look at the northern state of Punjab, for example. Punjab is suffocating under a massive debt-to-GSDP ratio, now exceeding 46%. Worse still, more than half of the states aggressively implementing these schemes are currently in severe revenue deficit. They are forced to borrow money simply to pay daily administrative expenses and government employee salaries. It is the ultimate fiscal sin. Borrowing money today just to pay the interest on yesterday's reckless political promises. A vicious, inescapable cycle of debt that threatens regional macroeconomic stability. But the cost of freebies is not just measured in rupees and debt. Sometimes the cost is extracted directly from the earth itself. Take the agricultural backbone of Punjab as a prime example. For years, the state has promised completely free electricity to the farming community. On paper, it sounds like a noble idea to support the farmers who feed the nation. But the on-ground reality has proven to be an absolute disaster. A 2025 report by the Comptroller and Auditor General highlighted a severe unintended consequence. Because the power is absolutely free, farmers have no incentive to conserve. They leave high-capacity borewell pumps running continuously. This has led to the rapid, terrifying depletion of the state's deep groundwater reserves. Environmentalists warn that at this rate, parts of Punjab could turn into a desert within 20 years. An ecological disaster entirely subsidized by a political freebie. If it's economically and ecologically disastrous, why do politicians keep doing it? Why would any responsible leader knowingly bankrupt their own state? The uncomfortable truth is simply this. They do it because it consistently wins elections. For a family living on the brink of poverty, the immediate impact of free cash is undeniably life-changing. Studies show that for some self-employed women, these state freebies account for up to 87% of their total monthly income. It becomes a vital lifeline that puts food on the table when formal employment fails. During periods of high inflation or post-pandemic recovery, this cash is what keeps them afloat. If a fiscally responsible new government tries to take the freebie away, they strip away the family's livelihood and are immediately voted out of power. If the ruling government decides to keep the scheme running forever, they eventually bankrupt the state exchequer entirely. This is the ultimate catch-22 of modern Indian democracy, a trap with no easy exit. Is there a solution? Can cash transfers exist without destroying the economy? Can governments provide a safety net that actually uplifts people instead of creating dependency? Economists often point to Brazil as a blueprint for how to do this correctly. Brazil implemented a massive social welfare program called Bolsa Familia. It was a cash transfer program, but with a critical, fundamental difference. The cash was not unconditional. It came with strict, rigorously enforced conditions. To receive the money, families had to ensure their children maintained high attendance in public schools. Mothers were required to take their infants for mandatory health checkups and vaccinations. The program was audited regularly, and non-compliant families were removed. It was an outcome-linked investment, forcing positive social behavior in exchange for relief. It reduced immediate poverty, while simultaneously building long-term human capital for the next generation. It was actual governance, not just a lazy mechanism for buying votes. By early 2026, the escalating freebie crisis finally reached the highest corridors of justice. On February 19, 2026, a highly anticipated, critical hearing took place in the Supreme Court. A three-judge bench sat to decide the fate of a deeply controversial state policy. The case involved the Tamil Nadu Power Distribution Corporation seeking to challenge new electricity rules. The state proposed to provide entirely free electricity to all consumers, across the board. This meant providing free power, even to wealthy landlords and large homeowners, irrespective of income. The Chief Justice of India heavily criticized the move, pointedly asking the court, "What kind of culture are we developing?" CJE Suryakant led the bench in questioning the fundamental logic of state spending. He noted that most states are running massive deficits, yet they continue offering freebies while completely overlooking development. The Chief Justice asked, "If you give free food from morning to evening, then free cycles and free electricity, who will work and what will happen to the work culture?" The court expressed deep concern that indiscriminate handouts remove the basic incentive for economic productivity, warning that unconditional handouts risk creating a permanent class of state dependence. They labeled the practice not as genuine welfare, but as a blatant, appeasing policy designed to manipulate voters. It was a stark judicial reminder that reckless distribution is not synonymous with welfare. It has merely become a competitive fashion statement among political parties desperate for power. If the courts see the clear danger, can the Election Commission step in to stop it? In March 2026, the Supreme Court agreed to list a major public interest litigation filed years prior. The petition, brought forward by lawyer Ashwini Upadhyay, sought a radical, permanent solution. It demanded that the Election Commission seize the election symbols of any party promising irrational freebies and legally deregister them from participating in the democratic process entirely. But the Election Commission of India, often considered the strict referee of democracy, is legally handcuffed when it comes to political manifestos. The much-feared Model Code of Conduct, which prohibits financial grants to sway voters, Nkigi, only becomes legally active after the formal election dates are announced to the public. Politicians are well aware of this massive timing loophole, and they exploit it perfectly. They simply announce their multi-billion-dollar freebie schemes weeks before the Election Commission declares the schedule. By the time the Code of Conduct kicks in, the promises are already made, making them legally untouchable. This brings us to the core of the constitutional debate. Where exactly is the line between welfare and bribe? The Indian Constitution explicitly envisions the country as a welfare state. Helping the poor and reducing inequality is not just an option. It is a fundamental duty of the government. Economists classify genuine, productive welfare under the term merit goods. This means investing heavily in public schools, specialized hospitals, rural sanitation, and child nutrition. These investments build long-term human capital and tangible assets that elevate society for generations. On the other hand, non-merit freebies offer absolutely no long-term capability building. Distributing free laptops, covering electricity bills for the wealthy, and universal cash handouts fall into this category. They provide instant gratification for the voter, but do nothing to permanently pull them out of poverty. In the landmark Subramaniam Balaji case, the court urged states to create sustainable employment rather than doling out consumer goods. Classic proverb: give a man a fish, and he eats for a day. Teach him to fish, and he eats for a lifetime. Right now, the political system is exclusively focused on handing out fish, at the tragic expense of buying fishing rods. Ultimately, the cost of free is an illusion. the price is never actually zero. That 1.7 lakh crore rupees projected for cash transfers this year has to come from somewhere. To put it in perspective, it is nearly double the central government's entire allocation for national education. The ultimate payer of this massive compounding debt is the everyday Indian taxpayer. India is marching steadily towards its goal of becoming the world's third largest economy. But can a rising global superpower sustain itself on a fragile foundation of competitive political handouts? The ultimate power to break this cycle lies not with the courts, but with the voter. Will the electorate finally learn to see beyond the illusion of immediate, pre-election cash? Or will the world's largest democracy allow itself to be slowly, willingly bankrupted, sacrificing its long-term future, one state election at a time? Because in the end, the true cost of free is the future of the nation itself.
23 साल पहले मेरी एक बात अधूरी रह गई थी, उसे पूरा कर दिया। भारत माता की, भारत माता की।